Alright, welcome back everybody. So today we're going to be talking about the tools you need to bag your car. Now I'm not talking about a bolt-on air ride kit that you buy from the store or online and you just bolt it up to your car. I'm talking about what you need to actually make and modify your own suspension components. With the rise of like C4s right now, they're super popular. You see all sorts of crazy builds online with people doing them. And air ride's been really popular, but there's no real kit that they sell for these. There's like one out there that everybody's seen that's just kind of like a somewhat bolt up, weld on kit. It'll bag the car, but it won't get it down low like that. So if you watched this series before, you've seen my air ride build. I did every single component online. I documented everything. And I thought it'd be a good idea to show you the stuff that I use to bag it. Now, we're not a big fab shop here or anything. I have basic stuff that I picked up and used, basic tools, all that kind of stuff. And just want to show you how easy that you can use what you have to make and do this if you decided to, you wanted to take on the project of bagging your car. The one disclaimer I will throw in there is that I do have a lot of experience with chassis fabrication, welding, suspension, all that kind of stuff. So I do have a lot of know-how when I was building everything here. So if you know somebody who can weld and metal fabricate, you can kind of just either follow my design or come up with your own, depending on what vehicle you're working on, but using the same principles and basic stuff. Now, I don't have the most high-end welder. I don't have, you know, any kind of CNC machine or anything. I just kind of used what I had around my shop or bought a couple things here that were not super expensive. I'm not gonna go out and buy a really expensive welder because I don't use it a lot. I use it every once in a while for something. I use it the most when I bag the car, but other than that, it just sits in the corner of the shop. If I need it, I fire it up. So that type of mentality of having just the basic stuff you need or you can borrow from your friends. That being said, now I'm just gonna do a quick walk around the car for anybody who's not seen it or not familiar with it. We'll take a look at that and then we'll get into basic hand tools that you'll need and then some of the other little bigger tools that you'll need. So let's just go ahead and take a look right now at the car and talk about that. All right, with the front, I went with a custom weld-on / bolt-on lower bracket that actually hangs the air spring down lower to get the ride height and to get the low stance that I wanted. I made the custom shock bracket at the bottom there. The top plate is weld-on and all that area is fabricated in there to fit everything. Pretty much every single bracket down there was handmade there to do that, but using the lower control arm that is the factory component. All right, so this is the rear of the car. This is the driver's side. This is the lower airbag bracket and mount. That whole piece is custom made and it incorporates the factory bolt for the factory spring. And then behind there is the custom shock mount that was made to hang the shock lower for the same thing, ride height, and to get the low stance. So all these brackets and the shock mount was all custom made. Going up top here, the top airbag mount is a bolt on to the diff mount there, and that's obviously fabricated. And then the biggest kind of custom different thing I did was I modified the outer tie rod bracket to lower it down to get the clearance, and I went with Heim joints there. All right, so that's just a quick look at my suspension. If you want to see any more of that in details, how I made those parts, just go back and look at my other videos. I have literally step-by-step of every single part I made. From the front control arms, the rear, every little thing, every step, every bracket. I have it all documented on the channel, so if you want to take a look at that. So first things first, main thing you need is just basic tool set. Like if you're watching this video and you're planning on doing it, you probably have all the sockets and wrenches and all the basic stuff, you know what I mean? Screwdrivers, pry bars, all that kind of stuff like that, because you're mainly taking all the old suspension out and modifying some components of it and putting it all back in. So you're gonna need just basic mechanics tools for that. And definitely a big hammer at some point, because you're just gonna need to move things around, for lack of better words. So besides sockets, wrenches, all that kind of basic stuff, a vise helps out a lot. If you see my videos, I use this red vise I have all the time for just holding pieces together, welding on, you know, just drilling brackets and stuff like that. So that really comes in handy. You probably don't need to have it to do this. You can pick up a set of like clamps just to kind of hold the whatever piece or bracket you're working on in place while you're welding it, or, you know, fabricating it, whatever you need. So I know a guy got these off of like Amazon or something like that for like 10, 15 bucks or something. So anything like that you can use just to hold your parts in place, helps out. And the other thing I would say is you need some sort of straight edge for when you are making straight lines on things. And with that, you're gonna need a fine tip Sharpie or a scribe. That scribe's probably the best thing to do, because that's the most accurate way of getting your measurements on the material. But if you don't have that, a fine Sharpie works pretty good too. Like, you're hand making all this stuff, so a lot of times, you know, you're grinding and stuff like that, so it's not 100% like if you were like having it like CNC cut or something like that, but it gets everything pretty much close to where you need it to be. So obviously you're gonna need a tape measure, and I have a couple little tools here that I use for when I'm making holes and things. This is like a center punch. You just kind of find your area where you're gonna drill, and then you just push down on it, and it makes a perfect little hole in the material, and then you can start drilling on that. This helps out a lot, but at the same time, not really necessary, but it's just something that I like to use personally. And this is like a little deburring tool for after you drill your holes and stuff. This gets all the metal and gives you a nice smooth area around your hole that you're drilling. Not necessary, but kind of nice if you're taking your time and you want it to look nice. These little things like that come in handy. So the next thing, as far as cutting metal, there is this little cutoff wheel that I have. It works good. It's like a whizzer wheel or any kind of like cutoff tool that you have. That'll work just as good. It comes in handy for, you know, cutting little things. And then obviously you need the matching cutoff wheels for that. So that helped out. You're obviously gonna need a drill and drill bits, and a couple, if you get like a set of drill bits, they're only good to like maybe 1/2 inch. This is like a 9/16, where I think I used like a 5/8 too, but obviously drill bit set, a good drill. And then the other thing is a angle grinder. I use this thing a lot. I use this for cutting, I use this for grinding, and also metal finishing as well. I have on it a flapper wheel, and these are like my favorite. These are good for grinding and metal finishing. If you're making, you know, cleaning up your corners and stuff like that, this comes in really, really handy. Been a fan of this for a long time, been using these for years. And then this is just another regular abrasive grinding wheel that you can use as well. So one little tip besides using these tools, I ended up getting a lot of these brackets prefabbed. This is an upper mount, this is a lower mount. When you get these, you don't have to drill out all of the holes and stuff like that. So all this stuff right there, I mean, it'll take you like a couple hours to make that by hand, where it was like 20 bucks for a set of 4 of these things. And I have them on all 4 corners, except for the rear lower brackets. That was a plate that just has 1 hole in it that I drilled. So they really cut down a lot of time. So it's one of those things, you can hand make it, it's gonna take a while, and a lot of these little brackets and tabs and stuff are available for relatively cheap. So that's just one option to keep an eye out instead of making things by hand. So moving on to saws. So this is a jigsaw. I use this mainly for my tank mount. I use ABS plastic, and this with a wood bit on there made good time of that, cutting that and notching all that, those little holes and stuff. So I use that mainly for this, and I use this I think on part of my control arm or something like that. But just a basic jigsaw, probably not really necessary. You use something else if you had to, but these are just things that I used when I was doing my car. So my main saw that I used is Throttle. This is probably one of my favorite tools. It's probably not the best tool for cutting brackets, but I've been using this thing forever, and I've been using this when for my parts business when we have to recycle a car and stuff like that. So we always have this laying around here, and it works just as good. But if you have a bandsaw or any kind of abrasive metal cutting saw, will work and do the job. Whatever you have pretty much will do the trick. So that's the one saw that I use. So I'm going to clear some space here, and the other thing that I got for making smooth edges is a belt sander. This is a Harbor Freight belt sander. It has this little round one here and then the belt here. This comes in handy when you are making multiple little tabs. You can tack them together and finish them on the belt or on here. Then again, this wasn't expensive at all. It is Harbor Freight. Now, if you have a metal shop, you probably don't have this in your shop. You probably have a nicer piece of equipment. But I bought this specifically for the belt for this project. I forget the cost of it, but it wasn't that expensive, and it's one of those things where it kind of sits off the shop somewhere. I rarely ever use it, but if I need it, I have it, and I didn't spend a lot of money on it. So this really came in handy. So the next thing is my welder, which is also a Harbor Freight welder. So, all right, even though this is a Harbor Freight welder, I have to say it works really, really well. This also does TIG welding and stick welding. I only have used it for MIG welding. It's 220 and 110, and it actually works really good. I've always had and used milling machines forever, and this is, I wouldn't say as good as it by any means, but this works really, really well. And I did that whole car, every bracket on the car with this thing, and had no issues with it at all. Obviously, if you were using a welder all day long, this is probably not going to cut it, but if you are a hobbyist or building something, this thing works great. It really does. All right, so that's it for today's video. As you can see, you don't need a ton of stuff to get a lot done, and it's all about just taking the initiative and doing it. Like, if you want to do it, just do it. You'll be able to borrow, rent, buy the stuff you need to actually make it, or go to a friend who's got a welder or whatever you have to do. But as you can see, I didn't go crazy. This is obviously not a metal shop here, but I did all one-off complete air ride suspension on that car with just this basic stuff that I have. So if you enjoyed the video, press like, subscribe. Thanks for watching.